I found my wife cheating on me with her boss, and now she's claiming I owe her $250, $0 in shared assets we never discussed. Am I wrong for demanding the truth when the foreclosure notice from our mansion and the divorce papers all arrived the same week? I never thought I'd be the guy writing a story about catching his wife cheating on him, but here I am. Honestly, the most shocking part wasn't even that she was cheating. It was how quickly everything fell apart afterward. One day, I was just a regular guy married to, living what I thought was a good life. We had the big house, the fancy cars, all the designer clothes she loved to wear. I worked hard, she spent money like it grew on trees, and we seemed happy enough. Or so I thought. It all started about 3 months ago when I noticed some strange things. She started working late more often, claiming she had big projects at her job. She'd come home smelling like perfume I didn't recognize, and her phone was always locked when I tried to look at it. Little things, you know, but enough to make me suspicious. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I had this gut feeling something was off. Then one night I decided to check her phone when she was in the shower. I know it sounds invasive, but I was desperate. I found some texts, nothing explicit at first, just flirty messages with her boss, Mark. She called him babe once, which was a red flag all on its own. I saw photos of her and him at some restaurant laughing and holding hands. That was the moment I knew. She wasn't just working late, she was cheating. I didn't confront her right away. I needed to see more to be sure. So I started digging, watching her social media, noticing she was deleting things, trying to cover her tracks. I found emails from Mark discussing their plans, and I saw bank statements showing she'd been spending money on flights and hotel stays, things I never knew about. That's when I realized it wasn't just an affair. It was an entirely different life she was leading behind my back. I was furious, hurt, and confused all at once. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. How could she do this? To me, I gave her everything, my time, my money, my trust, and this is what I got in return. It felt like my entire world was crumbling, but I didn't want to jump into a confrontation blindly. I needed a plan, a way to get the truth out of her without losing my mind. One evening, I decided to confront her. I sat her down, told her I knew about Mark, about the flights, the hotel stays, everything. Her face twisted into this bitchy smirk like she thought she was untouchable. "Oh, so what? You're just going to accuse me now. You're overreacting as usual," she snapped. She lied right to my face, saying it was all a misunderstanding, that Mark was just a friend, that I was paranoid. She even had the nerve to say I was jealous. But I was. I was hurt, and then angry. How could she lie so easily? How could she pretend that her affair was nothing? I could see the lies pouring out of her, trying to spin it like I was the one at fault, like I was the one who was crazy for suspecting her. But I knew the truth, and I wasn't about to let her manipulate me. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling like I'd been hit by a freight train. I kept replaying everything, her sneaking around, the texts, the hotel receipts, and I realized I couldn't go on living like this. My trust was shattered. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was gone, and I was left with nothing but questions and a burning need for justice. The next morning I started thinking about what to do next. I knew I couldn't stay married to someone who lied and cheated like that, but I also knew I had to be smart about it. I had invested too much, my money, my time, my emotional stability, and I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. I decided I'd get to the bottom of her financial secrets, especially after I saw some strange transactions on our joint account, large sums going out, no explanation. It was clear she was up to something bigger than just cheating. So I began planning my next move. I needed proof, I needed leverage. I started documenting everything, screenshots, bank statements, emails. I even hired a private investigator just to be sure I had everything I needed. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but I wasn't going down without a fight. I was angry, betrayed, and ready to take back control of my life. That's where I sit now, staring at the chaos she's caused, foreclosure notices, divorce papers, and a mountain of unanswered questions. I keep asking myself, how did I not see this coming? How did I let her get away with so much? And most of all, what's going to happen next? After I gathered enough evidence, I realized that confronting her again wasn't going to cut it. My wife had this way of twisting everything around, making herself look innocent, even when she was caught red-handed. The first time I called her out, she played the victim, crying about how I was just paranoid, how Mark was just a work friend, and how I was ruining her career and her life. That's when I knew I couldn't trust her anymore, not even a little. She'd lie her way out of anything, so I had to be smarter. I decided to wait for the perfect moment, an evening when she'd be relaxed, maybe after a few drinks, thinking she was safe. I wanted her to slip up to reveal herself. I laid out all the evidence I had collected, screenshots of the texts, bank statements, hotel receipts, and watched her face twist in a way that I'll never forget. She looked furious, then panicked, then bitchy as hell. "Are you serious right now? You're going through my stuff. That's illegal," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. Her eyes flashed with that familiar bitchy glare, like she thought she was untouchable. "You're just jealous because I'm better than you. Mark's the one who makes me feel alive, not you. You're boring anyway, always working, never paying attention to me." I couldn't believe the audacity. She was trying to gaslight me, telling me that I was the problem, that she was the victim. She claimed she loved Mark, that it was just sex, and that I was overreacting. She said I owed her $250, $0 in shared assets, because of some vague investment she made without telling me about. She threw out so many lies that I felt like I was losing my mind. I kept asking myself, how did it get so bad? How did she turn into this manipulative, lying person? I told her I wasn't going to be played anymore. I knew she'd been secretly funneling money into her own accounts, buying herself designer clothes, trips, even a new car behind my back. I'd seen enough to know she was planning her escape, and I wasn't about to let her do it without consequences. I told her I wanted a divorce and I wanted the truth about everything. Not just the affair, but her financial dealings, her plans to leave, her entire game. Her reaction: she scoffed, rolled her eyes, and dismissed my concerns as paranoia. She called me insecure and possessive, and then she started crying, fake crying. I knew it. She's good at that. She told me I was a terrible husband, that I didn't appreciate her, that I never gave her what she wanted. But all I saw was a woman who was willing to throw away everything we had for some fling with her boss. The emotional toll hit me hard. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry. My stomach was in knots. I kept thinking about the life we built, our house, the trips, the investments, and how easily she was willing to destroy it all. I'd been blind, I guess. Or maybe I just didn't want to see the truth. But now there was no denying it. She'd been cheating, lying, stealing from me, and planning her escape. The next day, I started making calls. I contacted a lawyer, told him everything I knew, and asked him to prepare for the worst. I told myself I had to be ready for a fight, whether it was about the divorce, the money, or her trying to take everything I owned. I also reached out to the private investigator I'd hired, and he confirmed what I already suspected. She'd been secretly meeting Mark, making plans, maybe even talking about leaving the country. While all this was happening, I couldn't shake the feeling of devastation. I'd invested so much in her, in us, and now it felt like it was all crumbling. I kept asking myself, how did I not see the signs? How did I let her manipulate me this way? Every time I looked at her, I saw the betrayal in her eyes, that bitchy smirk she wears when she thinks she's got everything under control. I knew I had to act fast. We had a mortgage on the mansion, which I now saw as a trap, something I'd worked so hard for, and that she was planning to walk away from, leaving me holding the bag. The foreclosure notice arrived just a week after the divorce papers, almost like she timed it to hit me when I was already down. The house was about to be taken, and I felt like I was losing everything: my home, my respect, my sanity. In that moment, I realized I had to get ahead of her. I started planning my next move: how to protect what was mine, how to expose her lies, and how to make sure she didn't walk away with a dime more than she deserved. I wasn't going to be the fool she thought I was. I was done playing nice. This was war, and I was ready to fight for every penny, every piece of truth, and every ounce of dignity I had left. By the time I had all my evidence gathered and my lawyer on speed dial, I started thinking about the bigger picture. My wife had always been the kind of woman who knew how to spin a story She was bitchy, manipulative, and never shy about lying her way out of anything, so I knew I had to be even smarter. I couldn't just confront her with accusations. I had to have concrete proof and a plan. One thing that kept gnawing at me was her insistence that I owed her $250, $0 in shared assets. She claimed it was for investments we supposedly made together, but I'd never heard of these investments, and she refused to show any documentation. That was the first big red flag. I started digging into our joint accounts, and sure enough, there were large sums of money moving around, some to her personal accounts, some for consulting fees she never mentioned. I hired a forensic accountant to trace every dollar. Turns out, she'd been secretly siphoning money for months, maybe even years, behind my back. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I wanted her to come clean. I planned a meeting at our house, pretending I was ready to negotiate. I told her I wanted transparency about the finances, about Mark, about everything. She acted surprised, but I could see the flicker of guilt in her eyes. Her bitchy attitude was still there. She sneered, rolled her eyes, and accused me of being paranoid. But I had the proof now, and I wasn't going to let her lie her way out of it. When I laid out the bank statements, the emails, the hotel receipts, her face started to change. Her usual bitchy smirk faded, replaced by a look of panic. She tried to deny everything, claiming I was jealous, that Mark was just a business associate, and that I was making these things up because I was insecure. She even had the nerve to say I owed her that $250, $0, that it was her rightful share of the assets we supposedly accumulated together. I told her I didn't owe her a dime, that I wanted a divorce, and I wanted her to come clean about everything. That's when she really lost her temper. She started screaming, calling me a terrible husband, possessive, and jealous. She accused me of controlling her, of trying to ruin her career, but I wasn't listening. I knew her game now. She was trying to manipulate me, spin a web of lies, and maybe even threaten me if I pushed too hard, but I wasn't going to back down. I had enough evidence to show she'd been planning her escape for months, maybe longer. Her reaction to the evidence was classic bitchy, dismissive, and full of lies. She claimed she was just trying to make a better life for herself, that she needed the money, that I was holding her back. She said she'd been planning to leave me for a while, that Mark was just her work crush and nothing more. But I knew better. I saw the hotel bookings, the secret bank transfers, the texts where she called him baby and honey. All of it pointed to something she was desperately trying to hide. Emotionally, I was a mess. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry all at once. I couldn't believe I married someone like her, someone who could lie, cheat, and steal behind my back. I kept thinking about all the times I'd trusted her, all the plans we'd made, and how she'd thrown all of it away for a fling. It hurt so badly, I didn't know if I'd ever recover from this. I was furious at her, but also at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. I started questioning everything, my judgment, my choices, my ability to see through her lies, but I also knew that I had to act fast. The foreclosure notice on the mansion arrived just a week after she filed divorce papers, almost as if she was trying to crush me completely. That house was my dream home, the place I thought I'd grow old with her, and now it was slipping away. The thought of losing it all made my blood boil. I told myself I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I needed to protect what was mine, and I had to do it quickly. I contacted the bank, started the process of refinancing and figuring out how to save the house, or at least what was left of it. I also hired a lawyer to prepare for the divorce, knowing she'd fight me tooth and nail. And I made sure I had all my evidence organized, emails, bank statements, texts, all ready to be used in court if necessary. As I sat there staring at the mounting chaos, I realized that this was only the beginning. Lies had caused a mess. I did know how to clean up, but I was determined to fight for my rights. I wasn't going to be the guy who got played and lost everything. No, I was going to stand my ground, expose her for the manipulative, bitchy cheat she was, and get some kind of justice. I didn't know exactly how it would all play out, but I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. She pushed me too far, and now it was time to fight back. The more I delved into her finances and her lies, the clearer it became that I'd been planning her escape for quite some time. I found emails where she discussed getting out, starting fresh, and even outright talking about leaving the country. She'd been funneling money into offshore accounts, hiding assets, and even setting up a new identity, or so it seemed. Every new discovery made me more furious. This wasn't just a cheating wife. This was someone who'd planned to leave me with nothing. I also learned from my private investigator that she'd been secretly meeting with Mark in places I didn't even know existed. Hotel receipts, private dinner reservations, and even some anonymous stays. She was orchestrating her departure behind my back, and she'd been doing it for months. All the while, she kept up her bitchy facade, pretending to be the loving wife, the caring partner, while secretly plotting her escape. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. One night, I decided I needed to confront her again, but this time with everything laid out on the table. I sat her down, told her I knew about her plans, her secret accounts, her affair, everything. I prepared a detailed report, and I wanted her to hear it all. Her reaction. Typical, she rolled her eyes, scoffed, and tried to dismiss everything as overreaction. She said I was just jealous, insecure, and that I had no right to judge her. But I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I told her I had enough evidence to take her to court and expose everything. I told her I was done being manipulated, that I was going to fight for the house, the money, and my reputation. That's when she got really bitchy, her tone sharp, her eyes blazing with anger. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" she spat. "You're just a stupid, boring guy who's holding me back. Mark's the one who makes me feel alive, and you're just jealous because I don't need you anymore. You're a nobody, and you'll never get a penny from me." I could feel my blood boiling. She was trying to turn everything around, make me look like the bad guy, but I knew better. I knew her lies, her manipulations. I refused to be played anymore. I told her I was filing for divorce, that I was going to take her to court for the assets she'd stolen, and that I'd make sure she paid for her betrayal. Her reaction was to scream at me, call me insecure, possessive, and a jealous loser. She said I was just a boring guy who couldn't satisfy her, that Mark was the real man she wanted. That was the moment I realized I'd been married to a woman who'd become a total stranger, someone who lied, cheated, and stole from me without a second thought. But what cut the deepest was the realization that she'd been planning her exit all along, and I'd been too blind to see it. The foreclosure notice on our mansion came just a week after she filed for divorce, almost like she was trying to crush me completely. That house, the symbol of everything I'd worked for, was slipping away. It felt like losing a part of myself. I decided I needed to act fast. I contacted my lawyer, and we began preparing for the divorce proceedings. I also made arrangements to freeze her accounts and protect what little I could of our shared assets. I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail. She'd probably try to claim all kinds of false assets, inflate the shared assets she was owed, or even try to accuse me of abuse or some other BS. I was ready for it. Throughout all this, I kept feeling this strange mix of anger and sadness. I hated her for what she'd done, but I also mourned the loss of the woman I thought I knew. The betrayal cut deep. I'd trusted her, loved her, and now I was watching her walk away, leaving me with nothing but a trail of lies and broken dreams. Sometimes I'd sit in the house, staring at the empty rooms, thinking about how everything had fallen apart so quickly. I'd see her in my mind, her bitchy smirk, her sneering tone, her lies, and I'd wonder how I'd been so blind, how I'd let her manipulate me into thinking we had a future. Now all I had was a mountain of evidence and a heart heavy with betrayal. Despite everything, I knew I had to keep going. I couldn't let her take everything, not without a fight. I had to protect myself, my reputation, and whatever assets I still had left. I started making plans for what came next, how to rebuild, how to move forward. I didn't want to be that guy who lost everything because of a cheating, manipulative wife. I was determined to come out of this stronger, even if it meant losing the house and everything else. But the truth was, I still didn't know exactly how this was going to end. All I knew was that bitchy, manipulative side had finally revealed itself in its full ugliness, and I was done being a victim. It was time to take control, no matter what it took. The days that followed were a blur of lawyers, financial audits, and endless sleepless nights. I spent every waking moment trying to piece together the mess had left behind. Her manipulations ran deeper than I'd initially realized. She'd set up multiple offshore accounts, transferred assets secretly, and even had a backup plan to disappear altogether. The woman I married, the one I thought I knew, was a master at deception. I felt like I was fighting a ghost, someone who was already gone, but still managing to drag me through the mud. I decided I had to act fast before she could finalize her plans to leave with as much money as possible. I filed for an emergency injunction to freeze her accounts and prevent her from moving any more assets offshore. The legal battle was brutal. She fought me every step of the way, using her bitchy charm and manipulative words to try and sway the judge. She claimed I was a controlling husband, accused me of trying to ruin her reputation, and insisted that I owed her the $250, $0 in shared assets, because of some fake investments she'd never disclosed. I knew her game, though. She was trying to spin everything to her advantage to make me look like the villain, but I had the evidence and I was ready to use it. The court hearings were intense. Sat there bitchy and furious, trying to intimidate everyone with her smirk and her poor me attitude. She kept insisting that Mark was just a business associate, that she'd never cheated and that I was just jealous and insecure. Her words were venomous, but I knew her lies and I wasn't about to let her get away with it. Meanwhile, the foreclosure notices on our mansion kept piling up. That house was supposed to be our dream home, the place we built our future. Now it was slipping away, and I felt like I was losing a part of myself with every notice. The bank was closing in, and was nowhere to be found, except in her carefully crafted lies. I realized I had to act even more decisively if I was going to save what I could. I reached out to a financial forensic expert to dig into her accounts and track every dollar she'd been siphoning off. What I found was shocking. She'd been secretly draining our joint account for months, funneling money into accounts she'd hidden from me. She'd even taken out a second mortgage on the house, trying to secure more money for her escape plan. I felt betrayed all over again. How could she do this? How could she betray me, our home, our life, all for some affair with Mark and some fantasy of a better future? The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her deception went. She'd been planning her departure long before I ever suspected. I also learned that Mark was involved in her financial schemes, helping her hide assets, transferring money, and even counseling her on how to get away without leaving a trace. It was a web of lies and greed spun tightly around us. At this point, I was exhausted emotionally and physically. I'd been fighting her lies, her manipulations, her attempts to gaslight me into thinking I was the crazy one. But I knew the truth now, and I was determined to expose her fully. I sat down with my lawyer and laid out my strategy: push for full disclosure, fight for the house, and prepare for a long legal battle. I knew she would try to drag things out, maybe even try to accuse me of abuse or some other false crime, but I was ready. One night, I finally confronted her one last time in person. I told her I had everything: proof of her affair, her financial schemes, her plans to leave. I told her I knew she'd been lying, cheating, and stealing from me. Her bitchy smirk faltered for a moment, then she snapped back, trying to play the victim again. "You're just jealous," she spat. "Mark's the one who makes me feel alive. You're boring and you're too insecure to handle it." I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "You're done. I'm done. You're not walking away with my house, my money, or my life. I'm taking everything back and you're going to pay for what you've done." That was the turning point. I knew this wasn't over yet, but I felt a strange sense of relief. I'd finally taken control. I'd fought for my rights, exposed her lies, and made it clear I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. The legal process would be long and difficult, but I was prepared. I'd learned a lot about trust, betrayal, and the importance of staying alert. Most importantly, I realized I had to rebuild, not just my bank account or my house, but my confidence, my self-respect. Had been a bitch, manipulative and selfish, but I wouldn't let her define me. I'd come out of this stronger, whether I got the house or not, and I'd make damn sure she paid the price for her betrayal. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was done being the guy who got played. Now, I was the guy fighting to regain what was mine. In the end, everything I fought for came crashing down around me faster than I ever expected. The legal battles dragged on for months, court dates, depositions, endless back and forths, and through it all, kept up her bitchy attitude trying to spin every story to her favor. She'd show up in court wearing her best designer clothes, acting like the innocent victim, even as I laid out all the evidence of her lies, her affair, and her financial schemes. It was exhausting, and honestly, I felt like I was fighting a losing battle. But I refused to give up. I knew I had the truth on my side, and I made sure everyone in the courtroom saw it. Slowly, the tide started turning. The judge ordered her to provide full disclosure of her assets, and when she finally did, it was worse than I thought. She'd hidden millions, offshore accounts, investments, even a side business she'd kept secret from me. All her lies, her manipulations, her schemes, they were laid bare. The foreclosure on our mansion was finalized, and she was ordered to pay back a significant portion of the stolen assets. The judge also awarded me primary custody of our dogs and a good chunk of the remaining assets, but the real victory was seeing her face when she realized she'd lost control. She screamed, called me a vindictive bastard, and stormed out of the courtroom, bitchy smirk replaced by pure rage. After she left, I sat alone in what was once our home, feeling a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. I'd fought hard to reclaim my life, but the damage was done. I'd lost the woman I thought I knew, and the house I loved was gone. Still, I felt lighter somehow, like I'd finally broken free from her web of lies and betrayal. I realized that I'd learned some harsh lessons about trust, greed, and the importance of paying attention to the signs. In the months that followed, I started rebuilding my life from scratch. I found a new apartment, got a new job, and slowly, piece by piece, I put myself back together. The anger and hurt still lingered, but I refused to let them define me. I knew I'd come out of this stronger, more cautious, more aware. I'd also learned that sometimes the biggest act of revenge is just moving on and proving that you don't need someone who lies and manipulates to be happy. Looking back, I can say I don't regret fighting for what was mine. Yes, it was a brutal, painful process, one that tested every ounce of my patience and strength, but it was worth it. I learned that even when someone you love turns out to be a bitchy, manipulative cheat, you have the power to stand up, expose the truth, and take control of your life again. No matter how much they try to lie, cheat, or spin stories, the truth has a way of coming out in the end. And if there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: don't ever ignore the signs. Trust your instincts, keep your eyes open, and don't be afraid to fight for yourself. Because at the end of the day, no one is going to do it for you. Not your wife, not her boss, and not anyone else. Take control, be relentless, and remember, you deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect. Anything less is just a game they're playing, and you're better off without it.